Hi, I'm Doyle, and tonight there's some things that I've got to say. Or more accurately, there's some things that I want to continue saying from what I began with my podcast from last week, where I talked about my beliefs and where I think they originate from and what they're based on to a certain extent. I didn't go through my entire belief system, but some of my foundational ones, such as the right of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that and all those that are associated with that come from God, that come from our Creator, and not from government. And my belief that government's responsibility is to protect those rights, not grant them. It doesn't have the authority to grant them. And so when I use that as a foundational perspective, that they come from our Creator, and that is the foundation of my beliefs as a born-again Christian, that God is the omnipotent Creator of the universe and all things in it. It makes clarification. It clears up any point of confusion that I might have had regarding the source. Now, it doesn't mean I fully understand how God works. I think that's the mission of life and of my life is to seek God and to seek more understanding of God with every day that I have. But what I want to go into tonight is how that belief system manifests itself in behaviors, in words, and in choices. And honestly, just share some perspectives that I have about sharing things like that isn't as clear as it one might think. Some people are much freer. They don't concern themselves with the ramifications of what they say. I'm a firm believer in free speech, that our Constitution grants all of us the right to free speech and freedom of expression. And so I don't believe that should be limited. But again, going back to the fundamental right, a God-given right, I think only extends to the point in time that it interferes with someone else's right. And then that I think we've reached the limit of our personal right in that particular case. And I think that specifically applies to free speech as well. But nevertheless, I think we filter our own speech, or at least I think that I do this on occasion for a couple of reasons. And one of the things that I struggle with is I tell myself I don't want to offend people. I don't want to hurt their feelings or have them think ill of me. And I think that's human nature. We all want to be liked by other people. We want to say pleasant things, or even if we disagree with someone, we want to avoid conflict. But I think we're finding ourselves in the world today, especially in the United States, in a situation where the whole idea of silence is compliance, and I'll let you apply that where it is being applied lately. And I did have a podcast a few weeks ago regarding that and how I think about that. But that's one where people will infer what you feel and think, not by what you say, but what you don't say. And the problem with that is that's not freedom of speech, that's freedom of thought. And I think it's even at a higher level than freedom of speech. And people shouldn't even try to stumble into that area, because it is a double-edged sword. That's what people don't seem to realize sometimes. But they use it as a tool, and that's their choice and what's going on right now, and whether I agree with it or not, that's the reality that we find ourselves in. But my point being that just because someone doesn't say something doesn't mean that they agree or disagree with whatever the topic is. But I'm finding myself convicted more and more, and when I say that, I'm talking about internally. Struggling with, I don't want to stay silent on certain things. I don't want to create conflict, but I want to be clear. And one of the things that I want to be clear about specifically at this particular point in my discussion here is about abortion. I spoke last time that I am absolutely pro-life. I am anti-abortion. I can't think of any exception, with the exception of potentially the mother's life, and then even then the last resort, that a fetus should be aborted. Don't want to risk the mother's life. I don't mean that, but I mean from the standpoint it shouldn't be a snap decision. The reason being is because I believe that life begins at conception. I believe that whether or not the fetus is viable, and I talked about this last week, or not, is not a metric that I embrace or subscribe to. I don't care what the courts have said. I don't care what science has said, because this is even more fundamental than science. Science is just an attempt to describe reality. It isn't the definition of reality. Science can only explain certain things. That's why it's incomplete, and it's also imperfect. It adds value. I'm not just trying to discount science at all. I'm just trying to keep it in the proper perspective. And this is something that as I've gotten older, I like to think I've gotten a little wiser, that my views on this have gotten stronger and stronger. When I was young, I used to think I wouldn't have ever thought that I could participate in an abortion. Never had the circumstances where that was a question I ever had to wrestle with personally. But I kept thinking, well, it's a choice. It's someone else's choice. It's not mine. I wouldn't do it, but that's who am I to say what they can do? But as I've gotten older, and actually subsequently to that original thought, I got married and have had my wife and I have had 2 children. I can't imagine ever having thought of ending that pregnancy. If I didn't feel like I could care for them, there are so many people in this world that would have loved and cared for that child. In fact, even in my family. But that was never a question in my mind. I wanted it to be such that my wife and I had a family, and we did. We were blessed to have a good family and 2 fine sons. But anyway, I wanted to be very clear about my point of view there. And while I don't like to declare that in the realm of politics that I am a single topic voter or a single policy voter, but I am unabashedly opposed to anyone running on a pro-choice platform. I just can't. That is a non sequitur and a non-starter for me on a description of policy or practice. Now, I know I'm only one voice, but I am a voice, and I'm entitled to my voice, and I'm entitled to my belief. I don't want to offend anybody, right? That's not my aim here. I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm trying to be clear. I think there's a difference. I would be welcome to hear any other kinds of points of view that speak from a different perspective and a different angle. I will listen. I've listened to a lot. I haven't heard one yet, an argument yet, or an explanation, or a point of view yet that causes me to change my perspective. I can't fathom it. But that's where I stand. That's where I think about that. Secondly, I think the whole racial situation we find ourselves in it's sad that there are still people that believe that people have to be separated and defined by their race. I was raised in the South in the 60s when the civil rights movement began, and on through into the late 60s and the early 70s, and a lot of the racial tensions that still existed that actually were inflamed somewhat during that time. I feel very, very blessed that I lived in a community where we didn't experience any of the conflict. Yet we were in integrated schools, and I think there was a valid effort and a legitimate effort by everybody to find commonality, to find ways to get along, and I think we did. I think we did, and we continued to, and I've tried to strive very, very hard to be clear that racism and racial separation and things of that sort, judgment and prejudices, are wrong. I've tried to raise my family, my children that way, and I feel that I've succeeded to the point in time where, we are very cognizant and respectful. And I'm sure there are others around that aren't, but I wanted to speak out on this. I don't want to say, oh, we have a lot of black friends and make that a statement of non-racism. That's not at all. But I first look at the human being and not the color of their skin. I mean, that is one thing that Dr. King said that I think resonates and is so relevant right now. He longed for the time when men were judged, but not by the color of their skin, but the character of their heart. And as imperfect as I am, I can say unequivocally that has been a goal and objective of me personally, to judge people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And I know there are a lot of evils in this world. There's a lot of evils in this country. There are a lot of people who have done evil things. I do believe there is racism in this country. I don't think it's limited to the whites being racist against blacks. I don't think it's limited to blacks being racist against white. I don't think it's any other group, ethnic and racial group, against the Asians or the Chinese or the Japanese or the Hispanics, the Mexicans. I think it's people that are ignorant against other people, and it just continues a tension and a strife. I've lived in this world a good while now, and a lot of the changes that I've seen are extremely positive. Not saying there shouldn't be some more improvements and changes made. I think there should. But it's got to come from a place of cooperation, of working together, not of constant bickering and struggle and fighting and arguing. The protests that are going on right now, I'm not sure that some of the people involved even know or have an idea of what their end game is, what they're wanting. Some have, extreme goals. I think that's a small number that they want to flip things in such a way that it creates dominance by the blacks over others. And I think some of the things that we've seen celebrities come out and say, very ignorant things that they've come out and say about one race, about the blacks being superior and whites being like animals. And if you've kept up with anything in the mainstream media, you'll know who celebrity made that statement. That to me is just a point of view of ignorance. It is uncalled for and is not helpful to make that kind of a statement and a generalization. Even if there was a situation where some whites were acting like animals and some blacks were more superior in intellect and behavior and values and things of that sort, that has nothing to do with the color of their skin. It has to do with the content of the character of their hearts. As Dr. King said. And until all of us can begin talking about human lives, I think it's going to be real difficult because there's always a division. I've seen something recently that I think is really poignant, and I think it sort of gets the point across. I know this is going to be offensive to some people, but it's going to have to be. They're going to have to reconcile what it means to them. The statement that all lives matter. If someone has to put a color on it, then that makes it racist. I don't care if it's Black Lives Matter. I don't care if it's White Lives Matter. I don't care if it's Brown Lives Matter. To say something at the exception of one color, one race at the expense or the exception of the other is racist. And trying to correct racial shortcomings and racism of the past, you don't make it right by creating racism of the current and of the future. What you do is you eliminate racism by making race not an issue, not a point, not a topic. It has to be a valid point about humanity. Human lives matter. I know that's not going to be a popular thing to say and to put out on the internet, but again, it's one of those things that my perspective and my point of view, I just feel compelled to be clear about some perspectives that I have. And this is one where I certainly would be open to hearing other people's points of view, and why they feel the need to distinguish one race from the other in saying lives matter. I don't follow or understand, but I'll certainly listen if someone wants to share their point of view with me, and see if we can't find some common ground. Because I think that's what it's going to take. As I said a while ago, it's going to take finding common ground, discovering ways to cooperate and to treat each other with dignity and respect, care, love, brotherhood, and importance, right? Everybody wants to feel important, and that's important that we all understand that. A system where one individual or one group dominates over the other always creates the desire for restitution, and comeback and conquering, and that's not where we need to be. Not in this country and not in this world anywhere. We need to find common ground. We need to find places of cooperation where we can respect one another, love one another, interact with one another, and make things better, not worse. I'm hoping that's what everyone wants, is to make things better. We're just have vastly different points of view and opinions on what that means, how to make it better. And so sort of the final thing I want to talk about tonight is more about the things that I think on occasion I have maybe elected not to say, and when it might have rubbed someone the wrong way, and avoided being clear. And this isn't meant to say I should be brutal, and that's not what I'm saying anyone should do. We can express our point of view in a constructive way, in a way that garners acceptance and gets the point across clearly, yet isn't offensive or harmful or hurtful. That's the difficult part, and I have been guilty of sometimes not saying anything when I wasn't prepared or didn't feel comfortable saying something that might have sounded a little rough. Specifically at this particular point in time, I'm not a very political person. I do have political views. I was happy that Trump was elected, not because I thought he's such a great statesman or politician. He certainly wasn't a good politician, but that was not why I wanted him in there. I wanted him in there because I didn't want Hillary in the White House. I think she's would have been really bad for the country. I know a lot of people say Trump was, but up until the coronavirus, I think he had delivered on many of the things that he said he was going to. And so, Trump would be much better off if he just kept his mouth shut and didn't use Twitter quite so frequently to express his points of view. This is a case where he's unfiltered, just the opposite of what I'm talking about here. But my point in even bringing him up is he's not very popular right now, especially with those on the left or on the Democratic side of the aisle. And in some cases, he's offended some on the Republican. And I think that's because he's being true to who he is. Whether I like him or you like him or others like him or not, he's absolutely been true to who he is, what he's believed, and what he said he was going to try to do. And he's done many of the things that he said he was going to, which is rare. I've lived through a number of presidencies, probably 10 terms at least, where I was a voter, and more than that during my life, but 10 to 12 times when I was actually a voter. And I don't recall any president, save one, that did the things that he said he was going to do. And the one that I save is Richard Nixon. I do recall that part of his message on getting elected was the first time was he was going to bring the soldiers home from Vietnam, and he did that. And it was at a great price and a great expense of life, and the North Vietnamese were able to overrun the South Vietnamese, but he did do what he said he was going to do, and that was part of how he got elected. And I think Trump, there were a number of things he said he was going to do, and he's done a significant number of them. this worldwide pandemic that we're suffering through, the coronavirus right now, the COVID-19, it has created a tremendous situation in this country, in the United States, and as well as in the world. It's people want to blame. Many people want to blame President Trump for it, and I don't think he deserves the blame. I think there's quite a bit of blame to go around if we want to look for who to blame. But I think there's also quite a bit of possibilities and some degree of misinformation. I do believe because people are using the situation on both sides of the aisle, not just the Democrats. I'm not just saying the Democrats, but the Democrats and the Republicans, the left as well as the right, and the alt-left and the alt-right and the extremes. They're using it for their agenda items. And there's a lot of misinformation, incomplete information, and has been shown on several occasions, totally incorrect information that's being shared out there, and people are having to try to discern, and it's really confusing because you don't know who to believe. So I've put it out there, things that I haven't said very publicly before, and I just want to be clear, as I said earlier. If anyone watching this wants to respond, post a comment, post a question, post an opposing point of view, I will gladly read it. I will do my best to respond to it as best I can, and maybe we can create a dialogue that will help create finding common ground, an opportunity to find some common ground. Anyway, that's what I had to say tonight. And again, if you want to say anything, add a comment, please feel free to do so. And I'll read them and I'll respond. And until next time, have a good evening and good night.